Now, you see, we are dealing with the cell cycle. Now, this topic presently we are dealing with phases of cell cycle. Now, while we are dealing with the phases of the cell cycle, the cell that is chosen to study the cell cycle is a typical eukaryotic cell, and it is a human cell, okay, that is cultured in a cultured medium, and this cell is used for study. So while it is taken for study, it is found out that a cell divides, okay, one in 24 hours. That means the cell division takes place once in 24 hours. Now if we see that what are, and you know, this division takes place only 1 hour. The total division, the rest, it is a resting period. Okay. Now that means total division takes place, it's completed in only 1 hour. Okay, and the rest, rest phase is 24 hours. That means time of cell division is 1 hour. Okay, it takes approx 1 hour, and it divides once in 24 hours. Now, if we see the two major steps that is followed during cell division is, first is the interphase. Okay, now interphase is a state, okay, of the cell division where generally cell is at rest and it is prepared for the cell division. Now if we observe it under a microscope, we can see that if this is the cell and this is the nucleus that is very prominent, so we may see the interphase nucleus as a prominent nucleus, and when it starts or goes into the interphase, see this nuclear envelope, it dissolves, and you know the chromosomes that are in a much coiled structure, condensed structure, they simply are mass of chromatin fiber and they loosen up. Okay, and it is the initiation stage of a interphase. That means cell is prepared for cell division. Okay. Now, next phase is the M phase. Now, what is this M phase? M phase is another mitotic phase. Okay. Now, in the second phase, mitosis takes place. That means actual mitosis, you see, it takes approx 1 hour to complete. That means once in 24 hours it happens, and this mitotic phase takes place only 1 hour. Now, if we see the mitotic phase in a gross or a general way, we see that initially it starts with karyokinesis. What is karyokinesis? It is division of the nucleus, and second is cytokinesis, that is the division of the cytoplasm. That means these are the two major parts. It initiates and this ends up. When cytokinesis happens, the cell is totally divided and it is again in the resting phase. Okay. Now, if we see interphase, you see here, interphase takes place in 3 phases. First is the gap 1 phase. That means the cell is in the resting phase and it is preparing itself to go to the interphase. Then second is the S phase. Okay. Now second is the S phase and the third is the G2 phase. G2 phase means again the time taken for the second mitotic division. Okay. Now see what is G1 phase. G1 phase is actually a gap between the mitosis. That means gap between 2 mitosis and the DNA replication. Okay. Now that means cell is preparing for division. Secondly is the S phase, and in this S phase what happens? Synthesis of DNA or the replication takes place in the S phase. That means synthetic phase. And the G2 is what? In the second G2 phase, it is actually the protein synthesis takes place. Protein synthesis takes place and cell is being prepared again for the second mitosis division. Okay, so basically if we take of cell cycle, generally we have two phases, the interphase and the metaphase. Now that metaphase is divided into three phases, the G1 phase, the S phase and G2 phase. That means this metaphase is divided into three phases. Okay, G1 phase, the synthetic phase and G2 phase. Now S phase, this S phase is the main active phase of this phase. Now if you see this diagram, this is actually a schematic diagram. So see, interphase starts from here to here, full. So that means this portion is 23 hours. And this M phase is only last for 1 hour. So what happens? Initially the cell goes into the prophase, metaphase, anaphase, telophase and finally it is the cytokinesis. Now this is, see, prophase, metaphase, anaphase, telophase and cytokinesis is the division of the cell. So these are to be dealt in detail in the next class. Okay, so you have to remember that when a cell cycle is taking place, two phases are there. One is the interphase and another one is end phase. So interphase is the resting period and it is a gap phase. Okay, and the end phase is the phase where actually division takes place. Okay, it takes 1 hour to complete. Now this end phase has three phases: the G1 phase, the S phase and G2 phase. Now what is G1 phase? G1 phase is the gap between the mitosis, that is one mitosis is taking place and again the cell is resting and preparing itself for the second mitosis. S phase is a synthesis phase where actually the DNA replication takes place. This is the active part, DNA replication. First the karyokinesis happens, then second the cytokinesis and ends in a cytokinesis. The karyokinesis starts from here. Prophase, metaphase, telophase, anaphase, karyokinesis finished, and after the karyokinesis is finished, cytokinesis there. That means the cytoplasm divides and two daughter cells are found. Okay, and G2 phase is again the protein synthesis and that growth phase, increase in cytoplasmic mass. Okay, and again the cell is prepared for the second mitosis. Okay, so then G2 merges with G1 and again S, so this is the continuous cycle.